Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the third meeting of the 2024 Interim Joint Committee on Education to order. Ask everyone to silence their cell phones. I would like to take a moment of cherished privilege. We are here in the middle of August. Schools have been starting across the state, a lot of excitement. Unfortunately, one school district last week had a very sad occurrence. A young fourth grade student from Henderson County collapsed on the playground and ultimately passed away. I believe her name was Lily. And we certainly need to lift her family and that school district up in prayers. Could you join me for a moment of silence before we begin our meeting? Amen. Thank you so much. Mariah, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll. Senator Funky Fromeyer.
Present.
Senator Givens. Senator Higdon. Senator Meredith.
Present.
Senator Neal. Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas. Senator Tishner. Senator Williams.
Here.
Senator Wilson.
Here.
Senator Wise.
Here.
Representative Baker. Representative Ballman. Representative Bojanowski.
Here.
Representative Brown. Representative Emily Callaway.
Present.
Representative Josh Callaway.
Here.
Representative Decker.
Present.
Representative Doan. Representative Jackson.
Present.
Representative Lewis.
Here.
Representative Massaroni.
Here.
Representative McCool.
Here.
Representative Proctor.
Present.
Representative Rayburn.
Here.
Representative Rawlings.
Present.
Representative Raymond. Representative Riley.
Here.
Representative Timoney.
Here.
Representative Truitt.
Here.
Representative Wilner.
Here.
Co-Chair West. Chair Tipton.
Here. And we do have a quorum. Do any of the members have any introductions, guests, comments before we begin? Representative Bojanowski,
Just a brief comment, if I may.
please.
I would like to commend Jefferson County Public Schools for a fabulous start to the school year. After our transportation struggles last year, they have turned things around, and I'm really proud. I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Representative Timoney.
Thank you, Chairman. I also want to briefly kind of shine some light on the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Obviously, we are still basking in the few days after the Olympics is concluded. There was quite a bit of Kentucky presence in the Olympics. The University of Kentucky, as an entity, did incredibly well. They would have finished 12th in the competition if they were a country for gold medals, and 16th as a country in total medals. But specifically, there were two that I want to point attention to. Lee Kiefer, the fencer. She's a constituent in the 45th and a graduate of Paul Laurence Dunbar High School. And she's a current medical student at the University of Kentucky. And Yared Naguz, I may have pronounced that wrong. He's a graduate of DuPont Manual in Louisville. He got the bronze medal in the 1500. That race was particularly important because typically the United States doesn't do well in the distance events. And we got gold and bronze there. The last time the U.S. had people on the podium, two people on the podium in that event, was 114 years ago, about the time Representative Rawlings was graduating from high school. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Massaroni.
Hi, I have a constituent here. I would like to welcome David Wright.
Okay, welcome. Glad to have you here with us today. Co-Chair West, do you have any comments before we begin?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll get right into our schedule. First item on our agenda is Commissioner Robbie Fletcher. If you'll come forward. Commissioner Fletcher, I think you've probably testified before, but this will be your first time before us as Commissioner of Education. So welcome. Please make sure your green light is on and the microphone is pulled close to you. Would you please identify yourself for the record?
My name is Dr. Robbie Fletcher.
Okay. Make sure it lights on.
My name is Dr. Robbie Fletcher. I am Commissioner of Education for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. This is my 29th year in education, and I'm very excited. A little bit different than the last time I sat before you, but I promise you I will not make any comments about when anybody graduated or anything of that nature, so I'll leave that alone.
For those who may not know, I have a practice of swearing everyone in
Yes,
who
sir.
testifies, so please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely, sir.
I appreciate that. Would you please proceed with your presentation?
Yes, sir. First and foremost, if it may, I'd like to thank Chair Tipton for taking that moment of silence for the families in Henderson County, for Cairo Elementary and the struggles that they've gone through. So for the Nash family, of course, our prayers are always with them. So thank you, Chair Tipton, and to this body for taking that time to just have a moment of silence for that family. So thank you so much for that. So as for the presentation, if we could go on to the next slide, please.
I believe
I
the
can do
control
that.
is there.
Great.
Should be there. There you
Got
go.
it. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you so much. First of all, just a little bit of background about Robbie Fletcher. I was a teacher for 8 years. I started my career at Williamstown Independent in 1996. I taught physics. I taught earth science. I even taught algebra 2 and geometry there at Williamstown. And then I was married and had to move a little closer to what was home at the time. So I did work in Bourbon County. I lived in Lexington for several years. I was blessed to be able to do opening day at Bourbon County recently. Taught AP Calculus, taught Algebra 2, ACT Prep. So I am an old math teacher, if you will, and enjoyed it tremendously. Then my wife finished medical school and had the opportunity to go home to Eastern Kentucky. And I taught in the school system that I was raised in. They were so kind to me, and I appreciate that. I started off as a teacher at Inez Middle. I taught there for 2 years at the middle school, so I went from AP Calculus to 7th grade math. A little different, but still a lot of fun. Also had the opportunity to be principals at the 2 buildings that I went to there in Martin County. I was principal at Warfield Middle. I was also principal at Sheldon Clark High School before becoming the superintendent of Lawrence County Schools for 10 years. And then I was blessed to have this opportunity as commissioner. So, a little background there about Robbie Fletcher. There we go. As part of the invitation, a little bit about my priorities as commissioner and the reasons why I really applied for this job. First and foremost, I think we need to build relationships, not only with legislators, which I've met with several of you individually already. I've had phone calls with several of you already. Had those opportunities, and I'll tell you the reason why those relationships are so important. I think in public education we have 2 rules, 2 objectives that we have to live by. First and foremost is to build relationships. The second one is to provide opportunities for kids. And if you were to break that down, if you've been to any of the speeches that I've given so far, the 3 areas where we need to provide opportunities, in my opinion, is to provide opportunities for kids to dream. We have to teach our kids so often that they have tremendous potential. We want to teach them to dream. We want to give them opportunities to dream. But also, too, we have to give them opportunities to struggle. Life is tough. We need to lift them up. We need to give them opportunities to grow, to learn, to struggle. And also, too, if you've been to any of the opening day speeches that I've given, the last one is that opportunity to succeed. My story in public education is something I'm very proud of. I'm very thankful for. But the people that I worked with every single day, from the cooks in the cafeteria to the bus drivers, all the way up to the teachers, gave me those opportunities to succeed, and I'm so thankful for that. So again, it starts with building relationships so that we can get to the point of making sure that we provide opportunities for every single child in the Commonwealth. Also, if you were to look at the percentage of time, if my time was a pie chart for the past 7 weeks, going on 7 weeks, a lot of it deals with the new assessment and accountability system. Of course, we'll be looking for help, and I'm very thankful that so many of you have been a part of that already. And I think we've had Representative Bojanowski, Representative Tipton, Senator Wise. Who else has been a part of that? I don't want to miss anyone. I know Senator Deneen was also there in the meeting.
Representative Truitt's been there.
Thank you, Representative Truitt. Thank you. Actually, there's a picture of Representative Truitt. I've made a comment about Representative Truitt that it was a much better day than what it looked like on camera for you. You were having a much better time than what that picture tells. I can promise you that. So again, we do appreciate the input from everyone. So very thankful for that. Other items that are on as far as priorities is the potential for looking at SEEK and what does that look, what type of changes that we may need to make. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be able to work with this body and others to see what changes may be necessary in the SEEK formula. Also, too, I'd like to bring as many voices as possible. Again, building on that, these are our relationships. We want to make sure that we give every single child those opportunities, and that begins with relationships, which requires reaching out and hearing as many people as possible. And the last thing I'll say is that you'll see in every email that comes out of my office from Dr. Fletcher, it'll say all in at the end. I don't do that flippantly. I put all in first and foremost to honor all those people in public education that invested in me. There's such a commitment from and if you heard my story about Frank Baldridge, and public education gave me the opportunity for the very first time to see flat ground, to be on a plane, to see a Major League Baseball field, to see the Gulf of Mexico. That all came through public education. And there's so many educators, both certified and classified, that invested in me. So when I say all in, this is my promise, my commitment to them that I'm going to do my best. I'm going to give it my absolute best to go through. The second part of that challenge is to make sure that I'm all in for every single child in the Commonwealth. Make sure that every single day I come in and I have at the forefront, what are we doing for children to give them those three types of opportunities that we talked about. Then also, too, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for every single person that reads an email from me, are you all in? Educators, I close with that. A lot of my speeches with different educators, I just want to know, are you all in? Are you willing to give that same type of commitment to kids? So again, the all-in mantra, if you will, I try to follow that through, and it's more than just a hashtag to me. It's a way of life, and it's also the way I try to invest into kids. Also, to give you a little bit of opportunity to, I'm sure that Representative Tipton and others have talked a little bit with you about assessment and accountability. I want to take the opportunity to let you know where we are so far in this, and I won't go into a lot of detail, but I do want to give you some background and let you know where we are on the moonshot. And if you look at the moonshot at the very bottom, we want to build a prosperous Kentucky, and we will launch an accountability system that is meaningful and useful to all of our learners. So we talk about bringing in voices. And in all of our surveys, when we talk to educators, well over 90% of the educators we talk to and other community members are well on board with the concept of student growth. So that's a little different than what we have now in accountability. But the idea there is, where did you get a child and where did you take them? So one of the input that we're getting in from a lot of people is, what does growth look like as opposed to change? So again, that's something that you'll see more of as we move forward. But also, too, this moonshot is centered around three main ideas. One, vibrant learning for all students. Many of you have districts that do things like defenses of learning. If you've seen a fifth grade student give a defense of their learning to say, this is what I've learned at my elementary school, and this is how it's prepared me for middle school, and eventually it has prepared me for what comes after school, that's powerful. That's a vibrant learning experience. And if you've seen a defense of learning from an elementary student all the way to a high school student, it's a wonderful thing to see. Capstone projects, passion projects, entrepreneurial type projects for students. How many of our students in high school now have entrepreneurial projects that they're bringing in money? And then how do we give other kids those type of opportunities to equip them to say, you can dream, you can struggle, but you can succeed as we go through with those type of opportunities. But there's a lot that's going on throughout our districts. For example, dual credit opportunities. Our partnership with CPE and also with this body and also with others that allows our students to have those dual credit opportunities. You know, one of the things that we want to make sure that every single child has a relevant experience when they come in. I think that's one of our big tools in the tool chest in fighting chronic absenteeism, is making sure that the experience for every single child is relevant. And I believe that comes through vibrant learning experiences. We also want to encourage innovation as it relates to accountability in particular. Every single person that's within this room is from a district that has special, unique characteristics that they're very proud of and they want to grow. So how do we make that part of our accountability system? Also, too, we're not going to lose focus on math and reading. We have to have our students competing at a national level when it comes to math and reading and where they are and where they need to be. Also, too, the third is making sure that we have partnerships, and in particular, collaboration with our communities. I can go through a long list of opportunities that our children are getting just because we have collaboration with our community members. For example, I shared with you a little bit earlier that Dr. Fletcher, the first time he was on a plane, was with his public education system. Martin County Coal supplied the planes, paid for the tickets, also gave us every opportunity. But it's more than just money. How do we provide internships with our communities? How do we give job shadowing opportunities? All of that comes through collaboration, and that's part of our United We Learn Council and their goals as we move forward. Now, you've heard me talk a little bit about Kentucky United We Learn. To give you a little bit of more background, that group is a very large group that is very focused on what does our accountability system look like. The composition of the Kentucky United We Learn Council includes 55 members, and I've pointed to several of you that have been a part of that work. Thank you for that. We appreciate it tremendously. But we have superintendents, principals, classroom teachers, parents, students, and of course community members that are part of that, post-secondary representatives. But also I'm very thankful to say we have several of you that are part of that work too. We appreciate that so much. The leadership also includes Ms. Penny Christian, who's our chair, Dr. Jim Flynn, who's vice chair, and then also Karen Dodd, who's our KDE lead. You can also see the structure of the group, and they come back with the recommendations that we take back to our council and have those approved and move forward with it. As a matter of fact, Representative Bojanowski and others, Representative Truitt, I'm sorry I started mentioning names, Senator Wise, Representative Tipton, and others, Senator Deneen, you can remember Prototype 3 and a lot of questions that we were asking, and we were wanting input from people. And you'll see some of those questions here shortly. So we're ready for Prototype 4.0. And what's going to happen is we have 18 districts that are part of the local laboratories of learning. And they have done innovative type projects as far as when it comes to everything from what you see in the classroom with teachers, how do we get kids that are having those vibrant learning opportunities, but also too, how do we change accountability that it's meaningful to each child? I'll give you a good example. How much different could education be if we didn't have to wait until the fall to get test results? What if we gave the test in the fall, in October, and it changed instruction the next day? Well, I'm here to tell you that's going on in education already. So many districts have those MAP, iReady, other type of programs where they test students and then do their MTSS system, multi-tiered system of supports, and change instruction the next day. Why can't that be accountability? So those are some ideas that we're looking at when we talk about the Kentucky United We Learn Council. Now, also a part of that, I wanted to kind of share with you a little bit about the accountability system. And I'm not going to go into detail. You have this presentation, but I do want you to see the type of questions. So we've talked a little bit about the 18 local laboratories of learning districts that are part of this innovative work. As a matter of fact, Lawrence County was a part of this work for at least, I think, 3 years, 2 to 3 years. And then we were working on a portrait of a learner. And what are the competencies that are important to the people in our community? How does that become part of our accountability? But also, too, we've asked 18 other districts. Those letters should go out today. I think they're going out today or tomorrow to invite districts that haven't been part of the work to say, these are the type of questions we want you to answer and give back to us as we develop an accountability system and, of course, eventually bring it back to the state legislature. Again, we are asking every single district to have input, either as part of those 36 districts or as part of their co-op. And of course, many of you are very familiar with our co-ops. Well, we're going to send out these questions to our co-ops and have them bring it back and have work sessions within those cooperative agencies throughout the Commonwealth. So these are the kind of questions we're asking. And again, I don't have a finished product ready to hand out. We're developing this together with districts across the state. And some of the questions you'll see is we've talked about an accreditation style system. How do we make sure that if that's the route we want to go, what does that look like? What's an appropriate time for local efforts? You know, how ready, so many districts have a portrait of a learner, but how many districts just have a picture? Has it really changed what goes on in the classroom? So are we given those vibrant learning opportunities that are tied back to that portrait of a learner? Then eventually, what's the quality of those? So again, these are ideas. These are questions that we're asking people to give us back. And who knows, our districts may come back and say, you know what, we need to steer away from an accreditation style. We may need to look more of this type of model. But again, we're getting input from your constituents about that and how do we move forward. Other questions: what policy strategies most likely to support necessary changes to remove color ratings in state law? I'm not a fan of color ratings. Now, I am very much a fan of comparability nationwide. We want to make sure Kentucky is at the forefront when it comes especially to math and reading and science. So when we talk about comparability, don't think that we're trying to run away from accountability. As a matter of fact, if you look at some local accountability models, it may be a more innovative, maybe even more stringent, maybe a more challenging accountability system that we come up with as we move forward. So some other items that we'll talk about here, just so that you can see the type of questions. What role should the state play to monitor quality without sacrificing local autonomy? We want to make sure that we give every district the opportunity to highlight the great things that are going on, but also identify areas where they need to grow. And how do we move forward with it? Other items. We talked a little bit about assessment. Will a state through-year model reduce the current assessment footprint? So we go back to that model where you're looking at giving assessments throughout the year, changing instruction the next day. Why do we need the 14-day window at the end of the school year? Why can't, again, that type of model and the growth that could be a part of it? And let me also say this. When I talk about growth, I'm talking about longitudinal growth. Where did a child end their second grade year? Where did they end their third grade year? Where did they end their fourth grade year? How much did they grow? Did we get them where they needed to be? How might a state through-year model impact local scope and sequence? We can talk about curriculum, we can talk about scope and sequence, but we need that input back from districts to say, what impact does this have on you? So there's a lot of tough questions here. And honestly, there's parts of this accountability model that scares me to death. There are certain aspects that scares me, but you know what? I want to hear from our local districts to say what they believe about that. And how much does the commissioner need to learn in order to implement an accountability system that they are comfortable with, not only comfortable with, but they believe in, that they want to push forward for our kids. Now, I talked a little bit about where we are. We've started with our prototypes. We've done 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is a little bit of legislative awareness, so we're in the moonshot journey here. But the study phase is key. We're going to send those type of questions out to all of our districts, especially those 36, to meet together to say, this is what we believe in. This is where we need to move. We're not going to agree on everything. But, man, if we could get 70, 75% of our districts and then win the others over with whatever that final product is, and something, an accountability system we can believe in, it'll move mountains. And more importantly, we're going to have those type of vibrant learning, innovation, collaboration for kids to have that opportunity to dream, to struggle, and to succeed. Now, I'll bring a little bit of a close. There's a few more slides on here, but I'll close with this. I talked a little bit about relationships. Again, I've talked about accountability. Now the relationships I'm trying to build. First and foremost, I've been to 3 different districts to be their keynote speaker. That has been a blessing. To see teachers, to see our cooks, to see our janitors, to see our bus drivers, our teachers, our administrators, just to shake hands and say, what do you believe in? How's it going? That means a lot more than an email. It means a lot more to go out and shake hands and talk with people. So I've been at Shelby County, Bourbon County, Rockcastle. I'm going to do a tour of Western Kentucky coming up. I'm going to visit Union County, Murray, Livingston, and Christian County over a 2 to 3 day span. I've talked about being the keynote speaker with KASS, KASA, KSBA. And that's not about talking about Robbie Fletcher. That's more about talking about our kids. That's talking about where we can go to get ideas. You know, I've talked to Representative McCool several times on the phone. That phone call means a lot more than just some type of email or text. So how many times do we have that opportunity to speak face-to-face to people? And that's what the commissioner wants to focus in on. Also, too, I've had great conversations with Dr. Quarles, president of KCTCS, Dr. Morgan, who is the president at Morehead State University. I'll be having dinner with Dr. Jackson at Murray State, and there'll be more to come just to listen and to hear. had the opportunity to meet with Senator Wilson. I've got others on here, Representative Petrie, Representative Tipton. He and I have done a little bit of a tour of our own. We've been at Washington, D.C. together. As a matter of fact, Representative Tipton was me. That was my first time in D.C. and gave me a good history lesson on a lot of things there, and I appreciate that so much. Of course, Senator Wheeler, I can't say anything without talking about Senator Wheeler from the Pike County area. I really appreciate his support. Representative McCool, Senator Givens. I think we're meeting in the next couple of days, Senator Givens. So looking forward to that also too. But also too, to close, thank you to each one of you for what you do for our kids. You know, one of the things that we've talked about, we're not going to agree on everything, but I hope we can have those face-to-face conversations to discuss how we move forward together. Then at the end of the day, we can still have dinner together afterwards. I look forward to it. I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm excited to work with this body. So thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it. Any questions for me or anything I could add?
Thank you, Commissioner Fletcher. And like you say, I think we've been following each other around
We have.
this summer. Just one point of information that I believe it is the goal of the Kentucky United We Learn Council to have a product ready to, a recommendation ready to present sometime during the 2025 interim. So hopefully we may have a meeting next year to discuss the recommendation and get more in depth on this. We do have some questions. First, we have Representative Rollins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner, and we appreciate that accountability model. I received a post from one of my moms, proficiency in reading in our local county, elementary 29%, high 31%, distinguished elementary 31%, high school 21%. It goes on with the other subjects. And we hear stories about students that come out and can't read and they can't write legibly. And you go to the store and you present money and they can't make change. So we hear these stories. I'm concerned too, when I go to meetings or hear administrators speak, that they address social emotional learning, the whole child, global citizenship. I'm concerned that there's a distraction on core subjects and academics with all these other new ideas. And so would you give us an assurance that you are going to focus on academics and core topics and try your best in your leadership position to avoid all these other distractions?
Thank you for the question. And I understand where you're coming from, and sometimes I agree with that. Sometimes we lose that focus on the importance of mathematics, the importance of reading, or it appears that we do. Of course, we've had two pieces of legislation that have gone through that we put a lot of effort into when it comes to literacy and the letters training and the investment to teachers to bring them up to where they're teaching the science of reading. They're making sure that students have that every single opportunity. Also to numeracy, another bill that passed as how do we make sure that students are having that opportunity to learn mathematics at the highest level, but starting at a foundational level. So I think already you can see an investment from KDE, of course the investment from our legislature, into those two models and into those two areas of concern. Now, I will say that it is very important that we give the emotional supports to our kids. They face so many trials and tribulations when they walk into our classrooms. And if we can't meet those needs, then we can't get to math and reading. So we have to find a balance with that. Again, truly focused on math education, reading education, because we want to be competitive. But those are the foundational skills to have our welders, to have our doctors, our lawyers. So it goes hand in hand. So I don't see the other as a distraction. I see it as an imperative to make sure that we can get our kids where they need to be in those core areas.
Okay, may I follow up?
Briefly.
Well, there's obviously been some systematic failures as our scores are lower now than they used to be. You can go back to 2015 or whatever date. And I think we provided emotional support then for kids in schools. I don't see the difference in what kids needed then. And there are current problems that are unique, but overall kids have always needed the same kind of support. So I don't see the difference in why it's lowered the scores since that time. I don't see any excuse for less performance from the kids, the grades.
If I may?
Yeah.
You'll never hear an excuse from me. I'm not here to give excuses. this is where we are now, and we need to move forward, and we need to move up. I will say again to emphasize, if you look at other data, for example, our grandfamilies, how many grandparents are raising their grandkids now, and the emotional support that a child needs, but also too the grandparent needs, that we have that obligation to help both groups in order to meet the needs of the child. So, kids, I believe, if you give kids high expectations, build a relationship, and give them opportunity, they'll go through a wall for you. They'll go anywhere for you. But again, a lot of times we have to meet those we do have to meet those physical needs and emotional needs to make sure that we can push them to those higher levels when it comes to math and reading. We have a long way to go, sir. I agree with you so much, and we'll do our best to achieve higher for our kids.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We currently have 5 members who have asked to ask questions. I'm going to, due to the sake of time, I'm going to cut it off at those 5. I'm confident Commissioner Fletcher will be happy if you want to reach out to him individually. Next, we have Senator Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, I'm all about changing the assessment system, particularly in getting down to more granularity so that it really helps the individual student. And that's one of the things, excuse me, get the results back earlier. So I'm looking at your principle 3, 5, and 6 here, where you're going to pilot a local performance-based assessment system. That's great. But I'm wondering why the decision was made to begin with these subjective subjects, social studies and writing, instead of the more objective things that you say that are your priorities, which are math, reading, and science. And I would think a performance math, reading, and science lends itself to a performance-based system on that. And just in your answer and a follow-up, lots of the emphasis has been in the past on the underperforming students. But if we have a real performance-based assessment, will it help us better teach the overperforming students and move them up the scale sooner instead of just sitting around and waiting for the rest of the class to catch up?
2 parts to answer to that. I think we're still waiting for that input. As we go into the study phase, we're giving all this information to our 36 districts, first and foremost, but also to all 171 districts will have that opportunity for input. So I want to hear what they talk about performance-based assessments. Again, we're giving them questions to research and then have that input back. Again, the model is not completed. It's when we talk about a prototype 4.0, it's more about trying to get that input and answering those questions. Now, I do believe as we move forward that if we give those kids the opportunity to move forward, it's about growth. I love the idea of granular data, because where did you get that individual child and where did you take them? That's for any child. If we look out in Western Kentucky, I'm going to say opportunity that we have, that I was talking with Superintendent Rob Clayton in the Bowling Green area, should say Warren County, but as in the Warren County area, they speak 120 different languages in his school system. Jefferson County speaks 140. Superintendent Liggins probably could give you the number for Fayette County. I don't have that with me right now. But think about the opportunity we have for growth of each one of those individual children, and how does that impact accountability? So going back to when we talk about accountability system, the direction that we want to go into is that growth with the individual child. And now let's see how a competency-based system, a performance-based system, a through-course assessment, what do our districts have that input back in from that?
Thank you.
Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. He just answered my question about the EEL students, especially in my district. Thank you.
Very good. Representative Massaroni.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, sir. A quick question. In this study you're doing of the districts, are you including any parents in that study, or is it just the superintendents?
The parents have been a part of the Kentucky United We Learn Council. There's representatives on that parent group. Now, we encourage each district to include parents as part of that accountability, especially when you develop a local accountability model. If you look at a part of, let's say that we say a percentage, again, this is just a possibility, a percentage of the overall accountability model to be about local accountability. You can't develop a local accountability model without input from parents. As a matter of fact, if you go through the Portrait Learner process, there's so many opportunities where you just call parents and say, tell us your story. And then how do we make sure that your child is getting exactly what they need? So as we move forward, our districts are encouraged to reach out to parents, but there's been a lot of parent input already to this point. And again, encourage that input as we go through. When it's finally completed, of course, I think a survey out there for parents would be great too. Before it's completed in those final phases to get additional input and maybe some tweaks as we move forward. But parents have already had a lot of input to this point.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Emily Callaway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Fletcher. This is excellent. I love to see a plan laid out like this. And something that has jumped out at me when we're talking about accountability and assessments, I don't see a whole lot of mention about how our teachers will be considered in that, their time, their training. They are so bogged down. We had 100 absences, 100 job openings 10 days before school started in JCPS. As you mentioned, they've got 140 languages, students to deal with. So I'm concerned for my teachers. I like that we're having these discussions, and I just want to kind of hear your thinking about how the teachers are going to fit in and how it'll affect them.
Thank you for that question. Let's go to the through course model of assessment. If we're utilizing a system that's there already, now we may have to change, either develop our own system of through course assessment or have a vendor, something of that nature, if we go that route. But think of how much less testing time there will be for teachers. We already are doing those interim assessments throughout the year. That's not really a part of accountability. And then we add on a 14-day window of assessment at the end. So if we look at this through course model, hopefully we can use, instead of having that 14-day, then that interim assessment just becomes part of the accountability model, and that gives teachers more time in the classroom as opposed to more time testing. Now, there are some issues there's some ideas in there as far as accreditation model. There's some heavy lifts in there, but we need our districts, not just superintendents, but their leadership teams to talk to teachers and say, okay, what do you think about this type of model? What are the pros? What are the opportunities that we have? But again, we want to make sure that we give every teacher the opportunity to have that input, but also too, how can we lighten the load? Because there's so much, and not just from the work from day to day and some of the red tape and things that you'll hear teachers talk about, but also too, dealing with each child as they come in and what happened the night before. And how do we love on that child? How do we make sure that they have the opportunity but also meet their needs? So again, with that being said, if we can lighten the load in certain areas, for example, the number of days testing, that helps our teachers. And of course, we'll look for other ways too. You're welcome.
Final question this segment will come from Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator, I'm going to follow up with that question a little bit because we do represent Bowling Green and Warren County. And EL students, I had a meeting about 3 weeks ago. We had about 25 people there with Warren County and Bowling Green and Jefferson County and KDE. Bowling Green and Warren County schools are about 25% EL students. So they get a pass the first year. They still have to take the test. This is accountability, and I hope you'll take this into consideration. But they still have to take the test, but school districts get a pass on the score the first year. But from that point on, they count against them. And I've been saying for the last 2 years that it's not fair to the school district and it's not fair to the student. If you can't speak English, how are you going to do well on that test? So I hope in developing this new model of accountability that somehow you will take that into consideration. So when we talk about test scores, I would like to see what Bowling Green and Warren County's test scores would be without those 25% that can't speak English. And they're trying their best to work with those kids. We've got the first innovation high school in the state of Kentucky. They're doing so many good things, but we're getting penalized because of taking those students in and trying to educate them. The students get penalized with getting bad test scores. The school system gets penalized for bad test scores. So I hope you'll take that into consideration. And it's not just if you don't have this problem now, your school district, maybe it's a rural school district, you will have in the future if immigration keeps progressing at the pace it is today. This will be a problem statewide, not just in certain school districts. So please take that into consideration and do anything that you can to help not penalize those school districts and those students.
If I may, Chair.
Please proceed.
Thank you. I agree, Representative Jackson. How fair is it to the child to come into the 7th grade, never spoken a word of English, and then we say in a year they're going to have to take 7th grade reading standards,
Yep.
7th grade mathematics standards. What they need is kindergarten, 1st grade reading and mathematics standards, and then build them up as quickly as we can and move them along. That goes back to the idea of growth. Where did you get the child and where did you take them? Of course, there's also, state and federal requirements that we have to abide by. But again, have that flexibility from this body, we'd really appreciate that. But again, it's not only unfair to our districts when you look at that test score, if you will, but it's really unfair to that child. We're not meeting their needs if we're trying to jump them ahead to 7th grade reading, 7th grade writing content, 7th grade social studies content, when they're not ready for 1st grade content. Where did you get the child and where did you take them?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Fletcher, thank you for being here and joining us today. I'm confident you'll be invited back in the future.
I look forward to it.
All right, thank you
I
so
look forward
much.
to it. And this was a little easier than the last time I was here, so
Okay.
thank you all.
In my enthusiasm to get started on the agenda, I forgot to ask for approval of the minutes. Staff has informed me. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Second. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. The motion carries. Next item on our agenda is a discussion about public school restrooms. I have Representative Matt Lockett is here. I'll let you go first, and please introduce yourself for the record, Representative Lockett.
Let me get this slide presentation up here if I can.
Better you than me.
We'll see.
There you go.
Let's see. I may need some assistance here.
Members, there is a packet of this presentation in your folders as well. It's titled 2025 BR 23. Go.
Well, look at that. All right.
Again, please begin by identifying yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Matt Lockett. I'm the state representative from the 39th District, which includes Jessamine County and a portion of Fayette County as well.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please proceed, Representative Lockett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This morning I bring to you an issue that was brought to my attention by many concerned parents of students in Fayette County Public Schools. At the end of last session, I was made aware that Fayette County Public Schools was building gender-neutral, open-concept restrooms in the New Britain school. Sinks and mirrors will be used by both sexes. Gaps under the doors to the stall can be used to exploit or intimidate other students. These stalls can be seen from the hall. And while we tried to get a bill passed, we simply just ran out of time. And since then, construction has continued on the school and on these restrooms that are unsafe and put students, particularly female students, at risk of harm, injury, emotional trauma, or worse. There are other states that began in 2016 using this experimental restroom design. The California Department of Education encourages them and offers guidance on how to build them. States like Michigan, New York, and Minnesota are also beginning to see this design in some new schools. According to the Kentucky Department of Education, in the Safe Schools Annual Report, incidents involving assault or violence, which includes sexual assault, rape, and other sexual offenses, has seen a sharp increase over the last 5 years. This report indicates that the third most likely location for a behavior event to take place was in a school restroom. The report also states that the grade levels that are most likely to see behavior events involving assault and violence are in grades 6 through 9. So make no mistake, this design and those schools that would follow after it only make this problem much worse. This is not a safer design. And while I'm assuming this is an effort to be all-inclusive, this design puts all students at risk. So let's see this for what it is. This is a removal of gender from our schools. Consider this example. Your 6th grade daughter is excited to enter a new chapter in life in a brand new school. Upon going to this new school, she discovers that she's forced to use the same restroom facility as middle school boys. Yes, there are separate stalls, but each stall is gender neutral. Each stall can be seen from the hallway. She's embarrassed enough in her body. So what does she do? She uses the restroom possibly anyway and enters a stall that a boy just came out of. There is urine all over the seat and floor of the stall because we know how middle school boys are. And so this allows her experience to be even worse. She comes home to tell you as her parent all about this experience. She tells you that she's scared, she's embarrassed, and doesn't want to use the restroom at school. So as a parent, what do? Do you tell her to get over it? You tell her to hold it during the day? Tell her to wait to use her necessary products? No, of course you wouldn't. I bet that you would do what so many other outraged parents have done, and that is try to change this policy decision. Now consider the following recent examples of violence in Fayette County Public Schools. Just last week, Henry Clay High School had to make the decision to lock their restrooms during breaks. Students can only use the restroom during class with a hall pass, thereby missing valuable class time. Dunbar High School also made the same decision to lock all restrooms except those in the gym area. And both of these decisions are due to violence and other activities going on in the restrooms at our schools. Now, we know that these are not the only 2 schools with discipline issues, especially in the restroom areas. This is a common problem, one that will only be made worse by making all restrooms and restroom areas gender neutral. Now, Fayette County Public Schools did send out a parent survey, and the district says that the results said this restroom style is what the parents preferred. Now, you'll see on the screen, and I apologize for the small print. Hopefully you can see it. You'll see the parent survey that was sent. But the parents that I spoke with said that they felt, quote, misled. That many parents said they never even received the survey. And notice how the drawings of the gender-neutral restrooms are new. They're colorful, floor-to-ceiling doors and accessories. The pictures of the other restrooms are old and outdated facilities. Who wouldn't choose the bright, big, fresh, new construction restrooms? What do these restrooms actually look like? Here you will see the architectural drawings of the new restrooms at Britton Middle School. And notice there are no signs of boys or girls restrooms. Here are the pictures of the current construction, so you can see these restrooms are being constructed exactly like the architectural drawings. And when parents discovered these, they were outraged. With this new design, I believe that Fayette County Public Schools is attempting to circumvent the requirement of Senate Bill 150 that schools, quote, not allow students to use restrooms, locker rooms, or shower rooms that are reserved for students of a different biological sex. The law is clear, and the intent is clear from Senate Bill 150, but what did Fayette County Public Schools do? They removed the biological sex label from the door, thereby circumventing the intent of the law. So what is the solution? In working with others, we have proposed language that requires all public schools in the Commonwealth that have more than 100 students to have at least 90% of their restroom facilities designated for boys or for girls, thereby allowing 10% to be all access restrooms. We can also have a discussion of whether or not this is a retroactive policy. And this is the current language of the bill draft. I welcome all input from interested parties. As I said before, this is a bill draft, and it's about protecting our innocent children, keeping them safe, allowing them to be boys and allowing them to be girls, and providing a facility for learning where they won't feel threatened, embarrassed, or be afraid to use the restroom. Now, I recognize that Fayette County will probably more than likely have completed or almost completed this school by next session when we can act. But my hope would be that while this is still under construction now, they would make simple fixes to this design. In fact, a simple wall down the middle of this area would completely solve this problem. It would be much more cost-effective for this correction now versus after completion. And for all future school construction and school remodels, the law needs to be explicitly clear that we take the safety of our students very seriously. We expect parents to have vital input by giving them all of the information necessary to make a decision. We expect our schools to be safe learning environments, not social experiments. We expect that our students shouldn't be afraid or embarrassed, bullied, or harassed in school. And at the end of the day, we want our public schools, including Fayette County, to be the best that they can be. We want our students in environments that are conducive to learning, thriving, and growing. So let's protect our most vulnerable, because I believe they are worth it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Lockett. Would you slide over? Before we take member questions, I want to give Dr. Liggins the opportunity to come up and give his response. Dr. Liggins, I believe you have a PowerPoint presentation as well.
Yep. I'll see if I can get it up here for you.
Thank you.
Is it this one?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Liggins, appreciate you being here today. Would you all identify yourself for the record, then I will swear you in.
Yes, sir. Demetrius Liggins, Superintendent in Fayette County Public Schools.
Abby Piper, Piper Smith.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
I do.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you all for the opportunity to present this morning. Just a quick introduction of our district. This is, as we currently stand, we have an enrollment of approximately well over 42,000 students. As you will see, we are a rich, diverse district with our largest population being our white population at 43%, and then other, which also could include 2 or more as our lowest ethnic population. We also are a majority economically disadvantaged district with over 50% of our students qualifying for free or reduced lunch. And we have approximately 17% of our students, and this was before the beginning of the school year. We've had our largest growing population is our EL population. We have over 100 languages spoken in our district as well. But we have about 13% special education and nearly 2% of our students who experience homelessness. Some of our programs, we have 70 schools in total in special programs. That includes 3 career and technical education centers, 12 program schools, which are magnet programs. Our largest school population is our elementary schools with 12 middle schools and 6 comprehensive A1 high schools. One of the things you will notice from this slide is we had the opportunity a few years ago to pass a 5-cent tax that allowed us to really get into constructing necessary buildings in order to ensure that we were keeping up with the growth of the district, as well as updating our facilities in order to maintain the need and for our students and their instructional environments. Throughout that time, from 2007 to 22, there's been approximately over 130 acres secured for future projects. There's been 7 new school buildings. There's been support facilities invested, as well as a return on investment of a bond of $658 million have now allowed us to invest in what is now worth over $1.6 billion in construction. Also, with a nickel that was dedicated solely to the safety of our schools allowed us to build all new facilities with vestibules in order for it to be a protection from people trying to get in to have immediate access to the building before checking in. And it also funded SROs, counselors, and those secure interests that I spoke about. And our SRO model is actually a model that is being modeled after now in several other districts when it comes to safety of our schools throughout the Commonwealth. Some of our special programs, we're very proud of these. We have 11 new magnet programs that go all the way from a all-girls academy that focuses on STEM practices to Locust Trace, which is an agricultural center for students interested in that, the Stables, which works directly with horses, and some special needs students, and a variety of different programs that our students, regardless of where they live, have the opportunity to take advantage of those through an application process and a lottery system in order for them to benefit from the many different offerings that we offer as a school system. One of the things that we have learned throughout this process and having such robust construction practices over the past couple of decades is we've learned some lessons along the way. But one of the key factors that we consider when building new facilities are first and foremost the safety of our students, academics, and ensuring that we have models and facilities that are going to be cohesive to a learning environment, as well as efficiency and compliance, of course. And through this, what we've learned, we've had living lab teams, which consist of students who will actually occupy the buildings based off of demographics and the geographic location, for who will actually, those families that will attend the new school that will be opening in that area. And this involves not only the students, this involves teachers, it involves families, parents, etc. And they really have an opportunity to provide feedback on what they would like to see in their new school and what they would like for it to look like from a child's perspective, a parent perspective, etc. And we also have a responsibility to ensure that we are investing the taxpayers' dollars appropriately. And so we build our buildings to last, not just going with what is happening now in education, but also ensuring that we have facilities that will last up to 30 years in the future. We have a rotation. About every 30 years is when a campus will actually receive a major renovation. And so with that, we want to make sure going in that we are continuing to improve and learn lessons from previous builds, and to ensure that we are offering the best and brightest opportunities for our students, as well as ensuring that we won't find ourselves in a few years with an outdated building based off of what we know is coming forth when it comes to future trends in education. Many of you may remember the incident, the TikTok challenge of a couple of years ago, where students were challenged through TikTok across the nation to go in and destroy, vandalize bathrooms. In Fayette County, that happened at several of our campuses. And it ended up costing the district and taxpayers well over $42,000 in repairs. And this was done, it was one of the unfortunate trends that students catch on to. And usually it's given in a 24-hour period. And they are much more aware and much quicker than the adults, and therefore go and take advantage of that challenge. And so this is one particular issue that we deal with when it comes to bathrooms, not only in our district, but that it's happening throughout the nation and the Commonwealth when it comes to restrooms in general. Also, one of the issues we continue to fight and have as a challenge is it's unfortunately unfortunate, but the tobacco industry is targeting our youth when it comes to e-cigarettes and vaping items. And so one of the other major concerns we have in bathrooms that we've heard over and over from our students and our teachers and our staff is vaping. Vaping is a odorless, many instances smokeless device that the tobacco industry is making look like regular school supplies, whether that be a pen or pencil, whether it is a jump drive, and it's things that when looked at, you would think it was something that a student needed in order to be educated and to have as part of their education environment. But in fact, in many instances, those are vapes. And so, and many of them, as you can see there, are flavored in fruity flavors and flavors where kids are actually attracted to them. And unfortunately, are 1 in 4 students have reported nationally that they use e-cigarettes on a daily basis. The latest report, Safe Schools Annual Statistics Report for the Commonwealth of Kentucky Department of Education from 22-23 indicated that the incidents reported in restrooms have risen significantly. The most common events reported was that tobacco use that I referenced, tobacco possession, fighting, and drug possession in general. As here on this slide, you'll see exactly how the state fared from 2018-19 school year to the 2023 final school year, and how that compares to FCPS. So for behavior incidents in general, if you look at the restroom on that bottom line, you'll see that throughout the state, restroom incidents for behavioral incidents increased a whopping 215%. And in our district in particular, in Fayette County, that was considerably more at 316%. We took on the challenge of really looking at our district safety advisory council and bringing them back together. Approximately 11 years ago, council met that determined that there was a need for those vestibules that I spoke about. It was a need for us to start having SROs on campus and a variety of other things. And so it had been 10 years, and we brought them back together. That council consists of, again, families, parents, local law enforcement, community members, local and state representatives, as well as our students. Part of that council was to have, actually, you'll see the council that's in the audience there, but part of their overall experience was to listen to students and to have a Q&A session with our students one evening. And the students named really what were the issues that they were most concerned with today as compared to 10 years ago when this plan was originally created. And those 4 items became the number one, or the top issues that they thought were of concern, which was there needed to be more focus on middle school safety in general. Supervision in the bathrooms and hallways were a really big one. Vape, THC, and noise detectors, as well as they were very much wanted to look into these individual stall, if you will, bathrooms in each of the schools. This was very surprising, I will tell you. Previously, the biggest concern 10 years ago had been guns in school. And so for them to have identified so strongly bathrooms as an issue was something that came as a surprise, I think, to all of us when listening to their concerns overall. And so, but by the numbers specifically, the number of students, over 40% of our students fear harassment in the bathroom and at school. Over 50% more restrooms are available when you have an individual configuration of bathrooms. 80% of educators agree that bullying and misbehavior, as far as vandalism and other negative occurrences, occur in the bathrooms, as well as nearly 20% of middle and high school students have identified that they feel unsafe going to the restroom. And that is Kentucky statistics overall. And so one of the things that the district decided to look at when working with contractors was a traditional layout versus individual restroom layout. And what this actually does is it allows for much more supervision. Our number one goal is to ensure that our students are able to use the restroom in private, use the restroom in peace, if you will, with not fear of being harassed, without fear of being bullied, and without fear of a lack of privacy, if you will. And what this, and so looking at these two configurations allows for that to occur. In our current facilities, there is a significant amount of staff that are assigned to restrooms that, if you can imagine, stand outside of the restroom because a staff member doesn't want to go inside the restroom with students who are supposed to be using the restroom and leaving. And so it is a considerable amount of personnel that's charged with standing outside of the restrooms in order to help with supervision to ensure that things are safe inside of those rooms. What this new configuration does is allow for less adults to be visible in order to supervise restrooms in general. And on the next few slides, you will see a few renderings of how these restrooms actually look. They are individual restrooms that allow students to go in and have complete privacy, and they allow for supervision to where adults can actually see who goes in and out of the individual restrooms, unlike the traditional model to where there's individuals on the outside of the restroom and students are on the inside, obviously causing issues that have caused those behavior referrals to increase. This is another rendition just to see how these possibly may look in a school setting. This was one that you saw earlier with that Lockett shared.
And I will point out, if you look at the renderings on each of these, that these are floor to ceiling enclosed separate rooms.
and there's nothing that would require the restrooms to. In fact, at the middle school that is currently being built, Mary E. Britton, the principal has determined that there will be a set of restrooms that are for boys. There's a set of restrooms that are for girls, and that there's nothing that has stated that these restrooms are gender neutral, if you will. They are simply for privacy purposes, and they are for supervision purposes. So with that being said, I will
Dr.
take your
Liggins, if
questions.
you and Abby could stay at the table. We have one citizen who has signed up and asked to speak on this. Eunice Montfort, you present? Would you please come forward? Make sure that microphone is turned on, the green light is on, and have that pulled closely to you. Eunice, for the sake of time, I'm going to ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Apologize, we are on time constraints. So please introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Eunice Montfort. I'm from here in Frankfurt.
Could you please raise your right hand?
I want to do a caveat first. I'm going to agree to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth based on my knowledge and experience.
Okay, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please proceed.
All right. First of all, I will give a little background on myself. I have basically 2 adult careers. The first was as a healthcare administrator in the medical field, and second, which is strange, but in the construction industry. So I've had 2 totally different fields of experience. But in each industry, I did encounter individuals who were transgendered, so I have some experience, and I've had situations that arose as a result of that I think are pertinent to what we're talking about today. First of all, I think we're dealing with a symptom to this problem and not to the root. We're not dealing with the root cause. I mean, when I was a young adult, whether I was in elementary school, all the way through graduate school, I never encountered a single transgendered person that I was aware of. And now all of a sudden it's everywhere. What is the reason? Why are we having this problem? We're dealing with a lot of symptoms, but we're not doing much research that I'm aware of about what is the root cause of this? Where's it coming from? So that's the first thing I want to say. My understanding was that Senate Bill 150 that was passed last year requires students to use the bathroom that corresponds with their gender at birth. That seems to me like a sensible solution to the problem. I don't know why that would not be a sensible solution to the problem. I will give an example of something that I encountered 20 years ago in a healthcare facility where I was working, and it was the first time I had heard the word transgender, didn't know anything about it, but I had been asked by the corporation to go to this particular facility. They were starting to have phone calls and concerns from from employees, from patients, and from patients' families about something that was happening in this particular medical facility, and they wanted me to go down and see if I could figure out what was going on. So I did. And about 3 days after I started the job there, I was out on the floor talking to staff, patients, and so forth, and I saw these 2 guys, and they were obviously guys. They were probably 6'4", each of them, probably weighed 250 pounds, had beards. They were obviously men, but they were wearing dresses and makeup, and I'm looking and thinking, what the heck is this? So I went to staff and said, what's the deal with these 2 guys that are dressing as women? And they said, well, we want to talk to you about that. That's part of what some of our concerns are here. And so we had a meeting, and they told me that these men believed that they were females, and they, for several months, had been taking female hormones and going to educational classes and all sorts of things because they truly believed that they should have been considered female. And I'd never encountered this before, and didn't really know what to do about it.
Eunice, I apologize for cutting you off, but I gave you a little grace on your
That's
3 minutes.
3 minutes?
That's 3.5.
Good grief.
But thank you for your testimony. Some of the members are going to be unhappy with me too because we've got a lot of questions. But
Well,
thank
I will
you
just
for
say
coming here today.
I am opposed to the co-ed bathrooms. I think it's a terrible idea.
Okay. Representative Lockhart, could you come back up to the table? We have several members who have questions. We have other agenda items. I'm going to cut the questions off promptly at 12:30. So we'll go in order. I apologize if we don't get to you. Please ask your question as concise as possible. One question per member. Representative Massaroni.
Thank you, Chair. Hi. We talked about the Kentucky Safer Schools report, 34.7% rise in incidents over the last 5 years, and we were actually closed down a large portion of that time, the schools. What studies do you have that proves that this is a good move forward? And is this just a way to, or is this a way just to get around Senate Bill 150?
Well, this has nothing to do with Senate Bill 150, but we can see from the data that when students are supervised, behavior incidents go down. That's just common knowledge. As you'll notice, the number one places where student incidents occur are in the hallways, in the restrooms, in areas where there's no adult supervision. So we do know that when there's supervision, behavioral incidents decline.
Representative Rollins. Had you on the list. We'll move forward. Representative Josh Callaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I do have a question. The language in the updated facility guidelines dealing with restrooms or bathrooms, it seems as if that there's a lot of language that's really based on radical gender ideology. For instance, non-binary or inclusive toilets. Could you explain what the definition of what that is that's in your facility plan?
And our facility plan?
Yes, sir.
I'm not familiar. I'm sorry. In Fayette County's facility
sir.
plan with non-binary, et cetera?
Yes, sir.
Superintendent, it's right here. Well, I think for this in particular, this has been addressed in Senate Bill 150, where there are restrooms that are available for students that are non-binary or inclusive, which currently happens now in our schools. And so that, I'm assuming, is how that's being addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Representative, I would just add, I believe the language was intended to be compliant with Senate Bill 150. And we can answer more questions afterward if that's helpful.
Okay. Representative Bojanowski.
Yes, I have a comment. I'm going to bring a perspective of an active elementary school teacher to the table here, and it's completely different than the perspective that Representative Lockett brings. When a fifth grade class goes to the bathroom, the teacher stands in the hallway. The students line up at their respective bathroom, boys, girls. You have a system that says, one student stands there, 2 stalls open, 2 kids can come in, 2 kids come out, etc. But they are not supervised in those rooms. The teacher is in the hallway. I walked down the hall on Friday past a 5th grade class using the restroom. A student comes out and says, somebody punched me in the bathroom. Well, what can the teacher say? She is not in the room. There's no one supervising those children in the room. As an educator, I would applaud this design. You can have a teacher or an adult standing, watching, sending the kids into the area one at a time to use the restroom in the enclosed stalls. And then they wash their hands and they come out, and you have their eyes on them every minute, except for when they understandably have their own privacy. I also want to comment just briefly. We have a teacher bathroom on the 2nd floor. It opens to a hallway. It is exactly the same model that you have in your design. I use the restroom. I have a bowel movement. There are people right outside the hallway. There is no problem. Men and women use that restroom. So I do not agree with the argument that a restroom, even an enclosed area, has to be dedicated. I really, really think that this design is safer for our children. Thank you.
Senator Williams.
Thank you very much. I got a comment. You're going to have to prove this to me, two things. If I look at the Britton Middle School as built, it does not look like an open design unless they're going to start knocking some blocks out over those sinks. It is not the open design your architectural models show. Number two, I cannot believe from looking at your other thing that 50% more restrooms are available in individual bathroom configurations. That's just counterintuitive to your models and to my expectation, understanding of construction. Number three, I want to know that if each individual stall has an exhaust system of sufficient size to remove the residual smoke / vaping from the previous occupant who was there after a door open and closed. So does each individual stall? And if you don't have the answers to these questions, I'll be glad if you send them to me or the rest of the committee later. I'd like to see the facts.
Yes, sir. I'll make sure you get that information. I do know that we're investing heavily in vape detectors in our restrooms as well.
I'm not talking about detectors. I'm talking about an exhaust
Visual.
system. You have a fully enclosed area. It needs to have an exhaust system of sufficient size to exchange the air volume after a very brief opening of that door. Okay? I want
We'll
you to
get you
assure
that
me that you've
information.
taken care of that.
We'll get
The
you
other
that
thing
information.
is, on your final statement, on the damage, you should have seen what they were doing to bathrooms back in the 60s and 70s. I'm not going to say what because I don't want to implement it, but that was pretty minor compared to the riots that I grew up with in the 60s and 70s. Thank you.
Senator Titchener.
Thank you so much. I'm hearing words over and over again, discipline and privacy. This is very private. This is going to take care of the discipline issues. This is not private to me. I don't know if you have a daughter or have grew up with sisters. If you have a girl in her cycle that goes in there and has issues, she has to come out of there covered in blood, no privacy to wash her hands. I mean, it is humiliating to think that a middle school girl would have to go through that with the hall open and people passing through. There's nothing private about that at all. In regards to the discipline, the TikTok challenge that moved across the state, my district, a couple of years ago, it's ridiculous. That I think could be eliminated if we didn't have phones in our schools, because it's not really much for TikTok if you can't take a picture of it and show, your trophy that you just ripped off the wall. So that's an issue I think that could take care of that. In regards to the non-binary and gender-neutral toilets, are there urinals proposed for these bathrooms, or is it just a toilet?
There are toilets.
Okay, I mean that clearly is making them gender-neutral in that way. But I mean, I think that's just a cleanliness issue for boys especially, and again, girls having to go in and deal with that and not having cleanliness. For me, I appreciate the legislation. I would say 100% instead of 90%. So maybe we can negotiate and talk about that when the session gets here. But I don't approve. I think this is a waste of taxpayer dollars. I think we have discipline issues that we can get under control if we actually discipline our students, as opposed to reworking the school, because the discipline issues will just move somewhere else if we don't take care of them in their entirety. Thanks.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Liggins, in July 2023, the Attorney General released a formal opinion correcting KDE's misinterpretation of Senate Bill 150. Can you tell us currently, is Fayette County complying with all portions of the law contained within Senate Bill 150, particularly KRS 158.1415, where it says it prohibits any child, regardless of age, to receive instruction with the goal of exploring gender identity, gender expression, or sexual orientation?
I can confirm that we do not teach any of those things in our classrooms.
Thank you.
Representative Timoney.
Thank you, Chairman. I will keep my questions very concise and on topic because this is about school construction bathrooms. All right. Obviously, there's a lot of contentious issues going around. As someone who's been an administrator, as in middle schools and high schools, supervision in the bathroom is the worst part of the job. It's awful. I know that all it took was one student to say, "Hey, you are lingering too long," and then I lose my career. So that's an area that is of grave concern. Thank you for using data to determine where areas are needed. I know you all showed incidents of referrals and where that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to look at the data and determine where the areas are and fix them. So that was a really, really important one. I reviewed I reviewed the board meetings during the planning phase for this middle school, and there was no public outcry at that point. I then also reviewed the 9 different local planning committee meetings pertaining to this, and there's a public section there, and nobody showed up. I find it frustrating that we, as a body, are now going to take the long arm of big government and thrust it into local control and say, you know what, we're going to fabricate something, we're going to fabricate a horror story and make you change it and make people pick sides on this. Now, let me be perfectly clear. We can't have gender neutral bathrooms in middle schools, period. We just can't. That cannot happen. In high schools, we cannot have that happen. But what I think is really, really important, and I guess the point of my question is, we've got a very important amendment coming up pertaining to education. Mr. Lockett, will this bill pertain to private schools, charter schools, and any school that receives a voucher money?
I think to answer your question, first of all, the amendment that's on the ballot is not a voucher bill. It is not pertaining to vouchers. It is pertaining to, do we allow the General Assembly to continue the conversation of, do we send taxpayer dollars elsewhere for school choice? That's what's on the ballot. Vouchers are not on the ballot. So let's make very clear about what is actually on the ballot. Second of all, that can all be included. As I stated, this is a conversation. This is something that I am open to changing. I am open to getting the language right. I think it deserves that. I think it deserves our attention. It's something that I believe is very important. And to comment on your previous comment, I think the reason why we don't see parents show up to meetings, it's not just about this issue. I don't think it's because parents saw it on the agenda and thought, oh, that's not that important, I won't go. If you go to any school board meeting, parents don't go. Whether it's Fayette County, Jessamine County, where parents don't go. So that's a broader issue in terms of how do we get parents involved. And I know the parents that I've talked to in my district, one, knew absolutely nothing about this design. They absolutely knew nothing about any type of meetings that were being held, because I guarantee they would have been there, because the outcry on this is not fabricated. It is not something that we are trying to find a problem just to get airtime about. This is a problem that parents brought it to me, and frankly, I will deal with it because I represent the parents in my district, and this is what they brought to me, and this is what they want.
And just to clarify, we agree that gender neutral bathrooms shouldn't happen in schools.
Absolutely.
So we're in agreement there. It's just the process. I think what we do, actually, let me reword that. I think how we do things here in Frankfort is just as important as what we do. How we do it. I think actually it's more important than what we do. I think that we've got to be very clear about, you're exactly right, vouchers are not on the amendment. That's why I gave the other options. Any entity that receives money to educate children, do you think this rule should apply to them? And should it apply to them?
I believe yes, first of all, but I don't believe that it would probably be an issue anywhere else.
Thank you, Chairman.
I will make a comment. Current KRS statutes on charter schools are very clear that public charter schools have to follow all the safety and health requirements as traditional public schools. That's already in statute. I'm going to use Chairman's prerogative and take the last question. I apologize to the members. I do have a quick question, Dr. Liggins. Did I understand you to say that in the middle school where this is being developed, that the principal's plan is to have separate areas for boys and girls restrooms?
You did hear that correct. And I would, if you can take a point of privilege as well, would like to say that most of the calls I get from parents and that many of our principals get from parents when it comes to bathrooms is based off of security. I get a lot of calls from families saying, my daughter won't go to the restroom. She's holding her to go to the restroom at the end of the day. What are we doing about supervision? I also get lots of concerns when we're looking at providing supervision from our teachers who, very much like Representative Timoney stated, are concerned about being assigned to a restroom to supervise inside of a restroom where one wrong accusation could ruin your career. And so this is really about ensuring the safety of our students, again, which is our number one priority. And it's about creating an environment where kids feel safe. And at the end of the day, it's a lot easier said than done. Many people have given me advice on what to do to run a school system, but when you're in it every single day, things are not as easy as just do this or do that. You're dealing with, I'm dealing with 42,000 human beings that have individual needs and desires and interests, and we have to make sure that we're creating systems that are going to protect them first and foremost.
Okay, thank you everybody for their testimony. Next item on our agenda is a discussion, an update on what's going on with Title IX. We've got Todd Allen, who's the General Counsel for Kentucky Department of Education. Todd, you've heard the drill. Please make sure the microphone is pulled close to you with the microphone with the green light on. Introduce yourself for the record and I will swear you in.
Mr. Chairman, before we begin, may I ask why we needed to cut off questioning and rush the meeting?
Because we have 2 more items on the agenda plus about 12 or 13 administrative regulations to get through today.
I'm happy to stay. Anybody else? Everybody happy to stay a little bit longer?
Representative Raymond, I don't know how long you've been in the General Assembly.
6 years, sir.
You should know by now that we have time restraints on how long we can keep the room. We have to adjourn
What's
by
in
1
this
o'clock.
room later, and what time does that start?
Representative Raymond, I'm just following the rules given to us by the LRC. And you've just caused us a delay. Todd, please introduce yourself for the record.
Good afternoon, Todd Allen, Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel for the Kentucky Department of Education.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Thank you, Chairman Tipton. I'll try to be brief in the interest of time. I was asked to present today a brief update on the status of the 2024 Title IX regulations that were promulgated by the United States Department of Education. Just a brief history, of course. The Title IX was passed over 50 years ago in 1972, and that was really effort by Congress at that point in time to codify equal protection measures. Title IX wasn't the only civil rights act that was put in place at that point in time, but it was one of them that prohibits institutions that receive federal funding from excluding students from participating in educational and athletic programs on the basis of sex. Of course, that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex as well as sexual harassment. The last time that the Title IX regulations were updated was 2020. We saw updated regulations in 2024 by the U.S. Department of Education, and I'll go through just briefly what those 2024 amendments do. They clarify the scope of sexual discrimination to include sex stereotypes, sex characteristics, pregnancy or related conditions, sexual orientation, and gender identity. There are additional provisions related to pregnancy or related conditions, including reasonable break times for employees for lactation, private lactation spaces for both students and employees, and voluntary leaves of absence for a student when that's medically necessary for recovery following the birth of a child. There are some amendments to reporting requirements. This changes the regulations to require that all employees notify the Title IX coordinator when they have reason to believe that Title IX may have been violated, and training for all employees at the institution. There are some changes to responding to sex discrimination. It slightly changes the standard. Previously, with the 2020 regulations, an institution had to respond when they had actual knowledge of a violation. It changes it to knowledge of conduct that reasonably may have violated Title IX. It inserts an informal resolution process, and it also makes some changes to the grievance procedures, specifically including both sex discrimination and harassment. The 2020 regulations only provide for grievance procedures for sexual harassment. The 2024 regulations were subject to court challenge. In June of this year, the United States District Court here in Kentucky entered an order enjoining Title IX, the final regulations from going into effect in multiple states, including Kentucky. That was appealed to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, and they declined to overturn that injunction on July 17th of 2024. The United States Department of Education appealed that determination to the U.S. Supreme Court, and on Friday, that was decided, and the Supreme Court denied the request to sever the regulations and allow those that were not challenged to go into effect. So as we sit here today, the Title IX final regulations remain enjoined from enforcement in 26 states, including Kentucky. As far as communications and updates that the department has provided to school districts, on April 22nd, we provided notification in the Commissioner's Monday message of the final rule, the Title IX final rule, and it's, at that point in time, August 1st implementation date. On June 21st, in our education headlines document, we provided articles related to the injunction that was entered. The same thing again on July 26th when an injunction was entered by the Sixth Circuit. And then most recently, just yesterday, we provided a status update to school districts in our Commissioner's Monday message. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. I see no questions. Thank you for bringing us up to date, and this is timely given the U.S. Supreme Court ruling on Friday.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a discussion about red tape reduction. If those presenters would all come forward and come to the table. During a session, Vice Chair Baker introduced a resolution to form a task force on this. However, did not pass all the way through, but we thought it was timely. We often get the question or comment from teachers that we have too many burdens in the classroom. And I think what we're asking for you today, hopefully, is can you give us some specific recommendations on that? I see Mr. Campbell, he'll be here in a second. Specific recommendations on things that are going on that impact you that hopefully we could improve on the process. So if everybody will make sure that your microphone is on, that green light should be bright, and make sure that the microphone is pulled close to you. Could everybody please introduce yourself for the record?
I'm Amanda Butler, Chief Academic Officer for Spencer County Schools.
I'm Tish Kennedy, 8th grade social studies teacher at Spencer County Middle School.
I'm Eddie Campbell, a Midland High School music teacher from Knox County, currently on leave serving as president of the Kentucky Education Association.
Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Now, whoever wants to go first, you all can arm wrestle for that. Please proceed.
You
Go right. I have paper.
You're prepared.
Well, I guess I'm going to go first, and I'll try to cut this down because I know you're short on time, but thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I want to begin by thanking Chair Tipton for inviting us here to the committee to talk about the many requirements that are required of teachers and the impact on instruction and public education, and we appreciate having the educator voice in the room. I'm going to try to hit on a few issues. Some of them may have red tape in them, some of them may not, but I just want to list up some concerns of members. One of the goals of the committee, of this committee, is to understand and improve the efficiency of the system of our public schools and their educators. I want to personally thank Representative Kleins from House District 68 for his incredible work on House Bill 300 that helped to improve the efficiency for due process for educators and reducing that timeline and really moving that system along. I also want to give a thanks to Senator Givens for Senate Bill 70 in 2023, which establishes a program that enables teacher-led professional learning that directly addresses class, student, and school issues, giving the practitioner the opportunity to lead the change in practice in public education from their work site and from their job location, using that expertise and then sharing it with other educators. As educators, it's important to examine the systems that impact the work and to identify and eliminate those inefficiencies so we can spend time maximizing learning and growth opportunities for our students. I know I can't cover all the systems in this short period of time, so I'm going to jump down here. And there are some issues that this body can't address. For example, there are special ed issues that reporting and the red tape that comes from that are imposed at the from the federal level. There are also issues that local district policies put in place that cause red tape that you all don't have direct impact on. So we just want to acknowledge that from the very beginning. I want to just briefly talk about some of the use of educator time. That's a big issue that's been popping up, and when we have conversation with educators across the state and our members. Educator workload and some touching on a little class size. Some required trainings and the number of required trainings and the PD that's required of educators each year. The application process, and then I want to wrap up just by talking a little bit about special ed and I have some recommendations along the way. I was going to have, but since we're short of time, I was going to have Jessica Heiler talk about the life of a teacher during the day, but we'll cut that out and just move on. I'll jump straight down to educator time. One of the biggest issues that we hear about educator time is because it's so broadly defined in statute. Educator time in statute is usually set at 185 days. Some districts vary on that just a little bit, but there's no definition of the number of hours included in each of those contract days. However, every standard contract used by school districts contains a phrase, "other duties as assigned." This phrase has been interpreted to abuse and take advantage of educators by requiring the performance of additional duties to occur beyond the school day. For example, many districts or schools require educators to work ball games, supervise after-school events, sponsor classes or class events, clubs, et cetera, without any kind of additional compensation. And as you know, if you've attended a local ball game or an event, these events don't occur right after school. They occur a period of time after school, which takes away from the educator's time with their family. And those are often said, you are required to do this. These are part of your other duties as assigned. They're outside that day. Many educators are more than happy to do that, but they should be compensated for their time in doing that. And I'll give you a primary example of this. I was required to work ball games. In order to work that ball game, I would have to go to the school bookkeeper, get the box, count out the money to make sure it was what was in there was what she said was in there, and identify ticket number 1. I would then have to set up for the ball game, and if it was a basketball game, I'd have to be there at 5 o'clock. The ball game, this varsity game, started at 7, but there were JV games that occurred before that. So I had to be set up to open the door. I would sell tickets all the way through the end of the third quarter of the varsity game. Then I would have to count down that box, reconcile it with the number of tickets, make sure I had accounted for all the passes and the number of people that had passed through that gate, make sure it got locked up, fill out all the paperwork the next day when I came in. That was 4 or 5 hours of my time that I was required to do after my regular work day that did not get compensated for. And that happens in school districts all over the state. There's also a big issue with workload. And one of our recommendations would be that we identify and codify in statute the teacher work day, and then inclusion of language that compensates educators for working beyond that in some meaningful way. That would be recommendation number one. That would help to reduce the abuse of that educator time. Defining the day would help to address also part of the second issue that I want to talk about, which is workload. And workload is the second only to salary. And when we did a survey in the spring of our members, we had over 1,000 members participate in that survey, and salary was number one, teacher workload was number two. The issue I just addressed was a big part of that workload. There are a number of factors that contribute to workload in addition to being required for non-instructional duties. Well past the end of the normal day, educators are more and more often impacted by the loss of planning time. Planning time provides an educator the opportunity to plan and prepare for instructions, score and give feedback on student work, record grades, contact parents, which is essential about the educational progress of the students that they're working with, or issues that the student may be having. Reflect on lessons for improvement, analyze formative assessments, and that will help to drive instructions, copy materials, and the list goes on and on. Educators do a lot during their planning time. However, educators have been consistently losing that planning time over the last several years due to sub shortages, required professional learning committees, ARC meetings, etc. We know and appreciate that the legislature worked to address the problem of the sub shortage by expanding who could be a sub. However, that legislation is so new and we've not seen the impact of that yet. The school year's just getting started. We're just going to see how that works this year. Hopefully, it will alleviate a lot of that. But anytime an educator loses planning time due to unanticipated other duties, that work is pushed off, but it doesn't go away. That work does not go away. So the educators still have to do all those things to prepare for their classes. They still have to score those. They still need to contact parents. So that either happens after the school day, where educators stay after school on their own time without being compensated, or they take that home, which takes away time from their family. We would recommend codifying in statute that there is a guaranteed amount of planning time so educators can do the work that they need to do to prepare for their classes, focus on their students and the needs of their students. Educators want to make sure our students are being successful. That planning time and protecting that planning time is so important so that they are fully prepared for the work that's going on with the students in their classroom. Required trainings and PDs is another big issue that seems to pop up a lot. There is a list of required trainings that is posted on the KDE website that must occur every single year. There's also trainings that occur beyond that aren't on that list. It's worth noting that some districts they send all those trainings out to their educators and say, you must complete this before X date or before you come, before we start the school year. You need to do this on your own time. There's not being included during their school day. They're not getting any kind of compensation for it. Some of those trainings, required trainings that happen yearly, count as PD. Some of them don't. Some of them have to do after school, which means they don't get compensated or get PD time for. And there's also instances where the legislature adopts new instructional programs and leaves it up to the district to manage the implementation of those programs. We had two amazing programs that have been passed over the last few years, a reading program and the numeracy program. Those are great programs, but they require a lot of additional training for educators. The letters program itself is 80 hours each year for 2 years. Some districts do not compensate their educators for that additional time. They're only required 24 hours each year. So that's additional time that's being spent away from families. That's an additional workload that's being placed on the shoulders. So that legislation has rolled directly into the classroom, impacting every teacher. It's going to be a great thing, but we should be mindful of what that looks like and the burden that's putting on our educators. We'd like to recommend that we, as the legislature, do an audit of all the trainings that are required of educators, put it in one place in the statute so it can be seen, so that when other trainings are being recommended, that it can see the impact. Some of the trainings that occur every year may not need to occur every year. And again, some of that may be because of federal legislation. I've done bloodborne pathogen training every year for the 20 years that I was in the classroom. I'm sure you've done the same thing. I could probably repeat the video verbatim, but every year we were required to do that training. So we recommend looking at all those trainings, other trainings that are recommended, and the impact that's going to have, so that we can really look at the impact that we're having on our educators and not burdening them too much during every single year without compensating them for their time, taking away from their time with their family, so that they can have a work-life balance. Because our educators really want to focus on making sure that their students are successful, and if they're stressed and they're overburdened, it's going to take away that time and focus that they can give to their students. Last, I'd like to talk about the application issue. So I hear it a lot during this time of year, and especially during the summer, and especially from new educators that are that are applying for jobs here in the state of Kentucky. It takes time to apply for positions here in the state of Kentucky, and here's why. So each school district reports to EPSB their vacancies whenever those come open or whenever they have knowledge of them. EPSB posts those on the KEP site with a link to the school district site, so you go to the KEP site, you search for the positions you're looking for, you find those, you click on the link there, it sends you to the school district site where you have to find how they want you to apply on the school district site. And every school district does it a different way. We have school districts that still require paper applications. We have some that do it online. Some school districts will have one program that they use. The next school district you apply will have another one, so you have to set up online systems for both of those. If you're lucky, you find two school districts that use the same system, and you can just transfer your stuff over because you already have the login. 2 years ago, this body passed a piece of legislation that would create a statewide application system for educators. So an educator, a new educator, someone coming into the system could apply one time, say, here's where the districts I'd like my application to go to, or I'm happy for my application to be out there for all districts. It would also allow them to upload their resume, all their credentialing materials, have it all in one place so that one application can be done. The state does that now with state employees. You apply one time through one system. If there's multiple jobs open, and I had a friend this happened to the other day, he applied for a job. He got an email the next day saying, I see you applied for this job. We have the same position opened here, 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 and here. You might want to apply for those too. You have to do those each individually. So that happens now, but we would like to recommend that this honorable body, you pass the legislation, we just need to make sure we provide the funding so that that system can be set up and implemented and put into place. And I think this will help to address a piece of our teacher shortage problem, especially depending on where in the state the shortage is, because then you have access to all these positions without having to go through each individual school district to do those applications. Last but not least, special ed, and I know we have some special ed teacher here in the room. We consistently hear from both our certified and our classified educators that work with our special ed students about the overwhelming workload from special education. I wish I could talk to you in detail about it. Representative Bojanowski is probably more qualified for that. But it's a very complex system, requires lots of monitoring, lots of reporting, and making sure that we're monitoring the progress and caring for the students so that they can be successful, but not only that the student can be successful, but the parent can be successful in supporting their student. We would like to recommend bringing in a diverse group of special education teachers, but also their aides, because the aides have a big responsibility in the special education world. bringing in those individuals to actually have a conversation about what the system looks like, where there's overlap, where the efficiencies can be streamlined, and to make that process better so that we're supporting the work that our special education teachers do because they're supporting the students that really need that support in their education career. So we'd also like
Eddie,
to
I don't
bring
mean
that
to cut you
recommendation,
off.
and that's it.
We've got a couple of other folks here we want to hear from.
Yes.
I'm confident we're going to continue this conversation.
I'm sure we will.
So Tish, Amanda, whoever wants to go next.
I pretty much agree with a lot of what Mr. Campbell has to say as a classroom teacher. I feel like each year, this is my 28th year of teaching middle school, and most of those have been in the public school system. And I want that if there's something that I'm supposed to do as a teacher, I follow the rules. And so I want to make sure that I do it and that I do it well. And I feel like there's more and more that's placed on what we need to accomplish, and either not enough time or not enough time to do it well. And both of those are important to me because I want to do the right thing for my kids and I want to do the right thing for my school. One thing I do want to bring up about the planning, Ms. Butler and I, about 10 years ago, our school needed a new principal. And we were challenged by our new principal to give teacher feedback. And the thing that we said is that we needed time. We wanted time to analyze data, grade our kids' writing, work together, our faculty meetings during the school day. And he figured out a way to do it. So we have 2 plannings in our middle school currently. And it is a culture changer. People at our school arrive at as early as 6:30 in the morning and they don't leave till 5 still. That's their own choice. They don't have to necessarily because we can accomplish a lot of what's expected of us during that second planning. I know a lot of schools, other schools in our district can't do that right now, but we have really tried to protect that planning. Our class sizes are a little bit bigger, but the most kids I have 32 kids in my largest class. But that time is expected. It is not teacher planning. That is our PLC time. We have it 4 to 5 times a week to meet on different other things. And then the other planning is ours to work on what's in our classroom, grade, make parent phone calls, that kind of thing. We realize that that's kind of pie in the sky for a lot of schools, but it does work. The culture in our school is very good. Our parents are happy, our kids are happy, and so it's a great place to be. But Ms. Butler, because of the work that she helped do on that committee too, she is now our chief academic officer in our district. So she can probably talk a little bit more about some of the district level type things, but that's from my perspective.
Thank you all for having me. To talk about that, I think, as Mr. Campbell said, a lot of our teachers want to do the work. It's not that they don't, it's not that people are lazy, it's we don't have the time. So many things that are coming down that do need to focus on foundations for students. You have middle schoolers we found during the pandemic that we found are in middle school and don't have some of those foundational reading skills that middle school teachers we do not teach reading. When we get a 6th grade, I taught